Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Time for True Show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to a Time for Truth show, and happy 2024. You know, we got a lot to look forward to this year, and so many people are predicting it's going to be a great year, and I would agree with them. And tonight, we're going to go over some topics, some themes that maybe we don't look at. You know, we're so concerned about health, about well-being, and you know, how to really make sure that we each can be given proper care. But do we look at, and are we guilty of not seeking where it's initiating from? How is it happening? And so tonight we're very lucky to have with us very important guest with our show, an engineer. If you can put his pictures up on the screen. His name is Mr. Rod Moyer. Mr. Moyer began very early on, at 20 years of age, in his professional career, when he decided to study martial arts and macrobiotic cooking. There you see with his lovely wife. And by his mid-20s, he was already teaching martial arts and working as a personal chef and caterer. Then in '87, he opened up Essential Seafood and Macrobiotic Restaurant in Philly as the owner and chef, and then subsequently joined Albert Lusk at Albert's Organics, a pioneer visionary group in the distribution of organic produce in the United States. And he ended up partnering with Albert on a national distribution network of organic produce and perishable foods before it was popular, which is why we're so lucky to have him with us tonight. When Albert's Organics, you know, grew and grew and grew, then he was, you know, he was offered and he was approached by natural foods giant United Natural Foods Incorporated, where he went on to be vice president of sales until 2013. Amazingly, in his 23-year career, he directed nearly $500 million in total sales. He's also, if that's not enough, founder and president of City Girl Sales and Marketing. He's co-founder and partner in brand management brokerage consultant for Mariposa Brand Management. And he's director of production and sales divisions for Ace Natural. Ace Natural is an innovative distributor of natural or organic foods in the Mid-Atlantic region. And there you see him. He seems to always be smiling, so we're going to have to find out his secret on the show. And I think this is part of it here. He's a father of 4 adopted sons, and he's married to Apostle Gladys Paulino, who's a member of the El Corban Church. And Lastly, as you see there, his pictures with his fellow teammates, he participates in the Senior Olympics every year, being there 7 times now in his basketball career. And engineer, if you will, if you can please bring him up live, and we'd like to bid a warm welcome to Rod Moyer. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Ben.
It's a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
You know what, I was going to ask you, because you really, it's very interesting, and you're very spontaneous, I see from looking over your bio. You definitely follow your instincts. So I wanted to ask you, because I remember that time in my life, here you are in college, and all of a sudden, boom, you decide, I'm going to go this way. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask you, because I think a lot of our viewers will get tremendous amount out of this, is how did it happen? How did you find the courage to do? And what inspired you to do that?
Thanks for asking. Look, it wasn't so much courage, and I don't know I'd recommend this approach to others, but I've always been led by my passions. I was studying computers and mathematics at Temple. I was smart and liked it, was good at it, but I wasn't passionate for it. And at that time, I discovered in Philadelphia, I came across a martial arts teacher. He was charismatic. He was a bit of a cult, Dr. Ben, as I look back on it. A bit of a cult in retrospect, but what I began to do is study martial arts, and this teacher also taught natural and organic foods. So I began to learn about food, began to apply discipline in my exercise, and began to transform my body. At the time, I was unhealthy. I was a smoker. I ate junk food. Wasn't overweight, but not at all healthy. Not at all healthy. I stopped playing ball after high school, and as I trained in martial arts and began to change my diet and noticed these positive changes in my life, I became more passionate about my new studies, cooking and martial arts, than I was about my scholastic studies. So about a year into it, I quit school. I horrified my family. And worried those around me that wondered why I was giving up a future in, an IT future to study martial arts, but I followed my passion.
Well, it's amazing. I think it takes a lot of guts, and you've been so successful. So you do that, but then you actually open up a restaurant, and you become the chef, and again, I want to ask you, because I want to tap into this mindset of yours, because I think it's so valuable. So you just said, okay, I'm just going to do this, it's going to just work out? Or, I mean, did you have any fears, trepidation, or was it just supreme confidence, or how did that happen?
Yeah, look, I wasn't so fearful. Maybe I should have been, but I was ambitious. I wanted to accomplish things in the world. I wanted to earn money, but I wasn't clear about the path that it was going to take me to get there. So early on in my cooking career, macrobiotics at the time, this is the 70s, early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And macrobiotics was trending at the time as a natural foods, an organic alternative diet. And there was a lot of spin around people curing themselves of cancer through the macrobiotic diet. That's not what attracted me to it. What attracted me to macrobiotics is they had a real system around food and cooking. The folks that were teaching me natural foods, they knew what to avoid. No white rice, no white flour, no tap water, no preservatives. They knew what not to eat, but they didn't really know what to eat, what proportions to eat it in, how to prepare it. So I'm more of a systems guy. I was studying math and computers. I wanted to understand the system of food. So that's what attracted me to macrobiotics, their system. But early on, I was training to become a macrobiotic chef. It was depending on how aggressively or proactively you did the studies. It could be up to 3 to 5 years to get certification. And I was early in that process. And I had an experience that was transformative and critical to the rest of my life. And that's when I met a woman named Sister Dorothea. I was cooking in a small health food store at Broad and Pine in Philadelphia one summer afternoon. My first meeting of Sister Dorothea is really imprinted because of the dramatic moments that followed. And she came into the store one day and appeared at the end of maybe a 20-foot aisle that led to my lunch counter. And as she walked down the aisle, Dr. Ben, I knew this was trouble. She was clearly deeply ill. I was no physician, but it was obvious. She was emaciated. You know, at her best, she probably weighed 100 pounds. She was short, 5'2". But she was emaciated at the time. Deep, dark circles under her eyes. Her gait was unsteady. And in the 20 feet it took her to walk from the end of the aisle to my lunch counter, I knew why she was there. She was dying of cancer or some other chronic disease. She was clearly in grave physical health. And I imagined before she opened her mouth that she was here for the macrobiotic cooking. And I was early in my training in macrobiotics, and I knew that this little restaurant counter was not the place to get the healing macrobiotic diet. It was more elaborate than that. So I had a sense of dread, really, that this woman was coming to me at this moment for help. And she did. She approached the counter, and I said, "May I help you?" And she said, "Yes. Do you serve brown rice and miso soup?" So those were key words that confirmed exactly what I suspected. This is macrobiotic. She thinks that there's something magic in this food that's going to cure her cancer. And I was pleased she made it down the aisle. She looked so sick. So I said, "Sister, please sit down." She was dressed in obvious some type of nun gear. It was conservative, but I recognized her as some type of religious. She turns out she was part of a Catholic order. And she sat down and told me her story. Her sister had recently died a rough death of cancer. And what happened is, you know, her sister got the diagnosis, the standard treatment at the time, which is still the treatment in many cases, but she was recommended chemotherapy and radiation. And look, the chemotherapy and radiation has improved dramatically. The treatment results are better, the side effects are less. But this was the late 70s, and it was rough. And Sister Dorothea saw her sister die in pain, as, you know, if not as a result of the treatments, they certainly didn't make her any better, and she believed made her worse. So she was a strong-minded, determined woman, and said she's just not going that path. So she decided she was going to cure, or attempt to cure, her illness with food and faith, deep faith, a deep love of Jesus. It was a long-term relationship with Sister Dorothea began at that day. I said, "Sister, you can't continue to come here." First of all, I learned she had walked 2.5 miles from her convent at the St. Peter and Paul's Basilica at 18th and the Parkway to Broad and Pine. It was like, "You walked in this condition, you walked?" I said, "No more. Let me get you a cab home, and may I visit you tomorrow?" So she invited me to the convent, and I began to cook for her. The best I could, with the knowledge I had, I began to cook for her. And we would share a meal. I would leave food for a couple of days, and I would come back. And over the next months and year, I did that practice. Sister Dorothea gave as much or more to me as I might have given to her in my service, because at the end of every meal, she would walk me to the little chapel inside of her convent and sit with me for a moment, and invite me to talk to Jesus, to pray. I didn't know how to pray or talk to Jesus, but with her encouragement, and she would leave me, and I would sit for 20 minutes, for however long, and then she would come back and collect me. And those were really meaningful moments. In retrospect, Dr. Ben, I think maybe I was experiencing a little bit of the Holy Spirit, you know, moving through Dorothea and in that chapel as I gave my service to her as a chef. The punchline here is her recovery. You know, in days and weeks, her health began to improve. She gained weight, the circles under her eyes disappeared, her strength came back, and by the end of the year, she was, you know, fully recovered. She never went back to doctors. She regained all of her energy. She was a tremendously energetic person previous to her cancer, I learned, and she recovered and became that. So that instances, we remained friends for the next decade, and she died in her 90s of natural causes, not cancer related. So that experience, Dr. Ben, was really transformative. So I went from, martial arts and cooking to improve my own health, and saw that not only could it incrementally improve our health, but under the right circumstances and with the right combination, it could have, potentially be part of an even more dramatic impact into somebody's health. So
it's amazing, because so many people in today's world are looking for solutions, and that story is so interesting to me because it shows different aspects that sometimes get ignored. And what I wanted to ask you, because I don't know about my viewers, but maybe they're the same as I, what exactly does macrobiotic diet mean, so that we don't pass something? But what does it mean, if you could define that for us?
Okay, so macrobiotics, first of all, is based on a traditional Japanese diet that went back centuries. And it really was a style of eating that even though I don't follow a macrobiotic diet today, as prescribed and as I learned then, but the basic tenets remain integral to my eating and cooking. So one thing, Dr. Bernie, about Dr. Ben, one thing about macrobiotics is they believe in whole foods. So they chose brown rice over processed white rice, whole vegetables over processed vegetables. But far beyond that, they had other principles. One of the things that's really interesting is, long before probiotics, now probiotics are so popular and trending, and for a reason. We the terminology of probiotics didn't even exist then, as I knew in the 70s. There were antibiotics, but there was no probiotics. There was no talk of gut health. People had digestive issues, but I never heard those terms until decades later. But macrobiotic taught then that probiotic-rich foods were necessary for a healthy diet. So fermented foods, in this case, in the Japanese system, were miso and tempeh and fermented vegetables. So they were integral parts of the diet. And macrobiotics also taught and believed it was really important to eat a balance of, grains. They weren't vegetarians. They ate seafood on that diet. Beans, but everything was in proportion. Sea vegetables for minerals, fermented foods for digestive health. So it was a comprehensive system of diet and eating. And as much instruction and detail as they gave for the food itself, they taught how to prepare it. They really believed that the essence of the cook was an integral part of the food and the resulting feeding experience.
Interesting. So I'm trying to interrupt you or to
please
interject here, but so in other words, they believed also that the energy of the cook or chef was actually transmitted kind of like as an intention through the food to the...
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Interesting. And then the other thing I was going to question you is, was the food more steamed and raw than it was cooked, or how does that involve also?
Look, they were very particular about that. The rice needed to be pressure cooked for maximum, for complete cooking and digestibility. They were big on steaming and boiling. The beans were cooked by a certain percentage. There was very little oil or added fats, very little frying. There was just tiny amounts of tempura, but that was more like a holiday dish, so a fried food, but eaten in very small doses. So they were very particular about methods of cooking.
Very, very interesting. Because if I look even in my own diet, that even though sometimes I have eggs, those are fried also.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Me too.
Very, very, so they went away from that. Interesting.
Yeah.
And now as you've gone on in years, like what kind of diet would you say that you would tend to follow if you were to follow your instinct?
Well, look, I do follow my instincts. This one of the most valuable things I learned from macrobiotics was what if we choose our food not based on our I feel like eating pizza, or I really am craving, you name it. But what if we make our food choices and choose our food and prepare our food with the primary objective being maximum nutrition? What is best for our bodies? What if we could bypass or overcome, the desires that we all have and the cravings that we all have? What if we could just eat those things as best we could determine them that would give us the maximum nutrition? So look, it's easy. It's an easy concept to embrace. It's a hard one to live because we're all humans and we have appetites, and and the things that we crave aren't always the healthiest. But that premise, really guided my food choices, for the next 35 years. And so I try to do that now. Every day I fall a little short in one way or another, but that's what I try to do now. Eat those, choose the foods that provide the maximum nutritional bang, and prepare them in a way, and in doing so, avoid any of the additives and the chemicals and the highly processed ingredients that I'm so afraid of. So that's a principle that I've carried into my diet today. I too eat eggs. I eat fried eggs sometimes, but there's a place for them in a healthy diet, I believe, if eaten in moderation. So that's a philosophy I've carried through my life. My diets have changed over the years, but that core philosophy has been a part of it.
Okay, I know something our viewers would enjoy getting from you. So let's break it down. Let's say with fish, what fish would you recommend that someone consume during the week, and raw, cooked, whatever? Let's go with fish first.
Okay, so look, I eat salmon. I try to get naturally. I try to eat fish that's not farmed raised. So I try to get fish that comes from clean waters. Alaskan salmon, for example, is one. But look, the other aspect of our food system is there's a lot of pressure on seafood. So I've learned that some of the most sustainable seafood is sardines and smaller fish. There's less of a carbon footprint, less of a and they're more readily available. So now when I eat fish, it's often sardines. I like salmon.
Now let me ask you a question. Why do they have less of a carbon footprint with sardines? Why is that?
Look, I'm no expert here. So look, I'm not sure. I think that smaller fish, have to consume less. Forgive me. I'm be speaking outside of my expertise if I say more on this subject.
Okay, no problem. Now, I'm curious because a lot of times, there's things that are on the point, and so you sardines, salmon, and any others, or?
Look, I eat some shellfish, again, not farm raised shrimp, but I think there could be a place for that in a good diet. We need protein, and I've been vegetarian and vegan for long stretches of my life, but I found that I do better with some animal food. So now I eat eggs, some fish, occasionally some chicken or beef, but I try to get clean. By that I mean organically grown and humanely grown. Another part of our food system is we're hard on our animals. Factory farming does not treat our pigs and our cattle and our chickens well at all. So, I try to get food that comes from outside that system, smaller family farms, organically and humanely raised animal foods.
Very, very interesting. And so, a lot of people out there would say, well, I'm married, my wife feels this, or I feel this. And how do you and your wife, how do you get along with this, and how do you work it out? Or you're in unison, have differences? Because that's part of our show, is really to see how to move forward in life, and there's things that occur. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. So this is part of my lifelong passion around food is that, look, I'm a little fanatical. Some people say I'm very fanatical in terms of my conviction and intention to eat only the cleanest. But look, I want to share that with others. And that, you asked earlier what inspired me to open the restaurant. Look, when I wanted just to feed and to make good food available for more people. And one of the things that I've come to love about my ability to cook foods is that I'm able to meet people where they're at. Let me tell you this as an example, Doctor.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was a stretch when I was highly engaged in my career at Albert's Organics, and it was a time-consuming moment, and I shifted a little from my diet, and I went away from my macrobiotic practices, and I ate more widely. And then I went back and I tried to eat and I said, well, I've lost my way a little bit. I want to go back and eat the macrobiotic meal that I cooked for myself for a 10-year stretch and abandoned or walked away from a little bit. And I went back and ate that same meal. I don't remember what it was: brown rice, miso soup, vegetables, beans, fermented, a standard macrobiotic meal. And it tasted, it was unsatisfying. It didn't have the richness that I had grown used to. It didn't have the strong flavors. So look, our tastes can be adapted. And just as we can be trained to eat healthy foods, we can be trained and become attracted to unhealthy foods. And that I fear is our state of the average American diet. We've trained ourselves and been trained to eat and be attracted to those things that may not be in our best interest. But you asked how I do with my spouse. First of all, I'm blessed in many ways to be married to Apostle Gladys Paulino. But one of them is we share a passion for healthy food. Our upbringing is much different. I'm a gringo from Philadelphia, and she's a Dominicana. But we share an interest and a passion to eat whole food. She eats a lot of fruits and vegetables. So we get along great. In fact, she's helping me because my orientation is always to eat the healthiest food, and sometimes I forget aesthetics. But she reminds me that, hey, food is sensual, and we must enjoy it, and it must be flavorful. So she's helped me boost the flavor, and I've helped her, bring ingredients in. So, as many things about our marriage, Doctor, we're a good pair.
I see that. You have a nice balance. Now, what do you think of? I hear a lot about coconut oil, olive oil. What do you think about that?
Look, I use them both. There's oils I'm a little more concerned about, but I think both those oils, are absent, and I know there's some controversy about coconut oil in particular with saturated fat. But anyhow, I believe both of those oils can contribute to a healthy diet, and we need healthy fats, and those are two of them, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I tell you what, many years ago I went through my own period of a health crisis at one time, and I actually did as you did, and I researched food. Mm-hmm. I did a tremendous amount of research, and I don't want to really advertise for any particular chain, but I started going to a whole different grocery store, mm-hmm. and it was so interesting. I don't know if you found this, but I found that when I went in there, that not only was the food different, but when I walked in, I felt differently. Uh-huh. I almost felt like I was going into an art gallery. Nice. Or a museum, but it was food, and mm-hmm. I can really, concur with you, with your wife, because it became like a form. Almost like an art form of life, almost like nice. Creating your life. Nice. So, I know there's a lot more we want to get into, but unfortunately, we've had such a good time that it's flown by. So what I was going to ask you, if it's okay with you, because we have a whole plethora of different topics on food, farming, our public health, that we haven't even gotten into, that we won't have time to. So I'd like to invite you back.
Great. I'd welcome that opportunity, Doctor.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. We didn't get also, this guy plays on the Senior Olympics in basketball for all those men and women out there who still feel like I do, and probably a lot of us, that we can still do something. So we look forward to having you back.
Great, doctor.
And-
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. And for those of you watching out there, I hope this has helped. We're going to continue with this and with other topics like this for 2024. Have a very good night.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet